capacitación que se le presenta al receptor, al oyente, al escucha, para que pueda configurar un escenario propio. Es un género totalmente libre en su construcción.
Radio art is the invitation that we make to the receiver,
the radio listener.
Time to configure the space of
Los ingredientes con los que vamos a trabajar son los elementos del lenguaje, música, con efectos, con la voz, la palabra y con el silencio.
There is no rigid diagram or structure that allow us to design radio art. You're listening to the noise of the message.
Para una mejor escucha, recomendamos el uso de auriculares.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good. And yourself?
Yes, I am.
Is it early in the morning?
No. Hi there.
Hello.
I am Gerardo from Santiago de Chile. It's starting to become very cold here. I guess you're getting lots of sunshine and warm.
No, it was in Europe or in Vienna, and then since some days, today it was raining all day long, and I don't know, it only has, I think, 12 degrees.
Wow.
But anyway, it will get very warm on the weekend again. It makes like this. It's crazy, somehow.
I think that silence is a totally underestimated tool on different levels. Like in the radio, at least in the National Public Radio in Austria, and not only in Austria, but also in, at least I know from all the National Public Radios in Europe, silence is what the radio makers have lots of fear. It makes fear. Silence is fear, because it's not allowed to be, there's silence on the radio, because in the moment there's some seconds of silence, everybody is afraid that the transmitter is broken or something is wrong. And I think silence is a very important tool in how you do pieces, and also how you structure a piece, or how you do radio. Silence is such a strong method that people also start listening again. No, if it is silent suddenly, then people say, "Oh, okay," because normally people, or very often people, use radio also more like a sound wall where it's always there. And I think silence is very important.
Something about the midnight sun.
Also, it needs some silence sometimes to think. And in the radio, it's more like, of course, how do you structure things, and a very important tool for how you do the dramaturgy and stuff of the pieces. And there was even a very long piece about silence, which was done by an Austrian artist called Bruno Kisek. And he was dealing with all the different lengths of silences you can use on radio. Because for a time it was, I think, in our radio it's 30 seconds. But before if it is 30 seconds of silence, that means under 40 dB or something, then all the machines get crazy, and then after 30 seconds or 35 there is the emergency broadcasting tool is popping in and playing some Mozart and Beethoven music. So, and if you know you are broadcasting pieces which have longer silences or work with that, then you better tell them also to switch off the emergency broadcasting. And meanwhile, it's also that we have a tone. If it is a longer silence in the piece, you just put, we call it Maskierton. It's like a mask sound. You cannot hear it, but it makes some levels so that the machine is recognizing there's nothing wrong. But I think that silence is very important, that you also listen really careful. In between all the noise, it's very good to have some silence sometimes. I think it's underestimated.
Fault of electricity.
I'm missing the correct English word here. Underestimated tool. Tool is maybe not the correct word, but it's like everybody's so afraid of silence. Maybe because it's also a sign that one is alone, or I don't know. I think silence is very important. And sometimes it's very good to have lots of noise too.
Here we have a sentence that in public art or this kind of things, that 1 minute of silence to, for example, the victims of things. And I try to do 1 minute of silence in radio. So the panic. Why do that? Why do that? We don't do that in radio. I started to work in radio at my 15 years. And the first thing that they teach me in the radio station was not silence, because it's a whole in the programmation. Not silence. Silence, bad. Music, good.
It's very bad. I can remember as we still, ORF still produced on wheel-to-wheel tapes a long time ago. It was also like, then most of the times Heidi Grundmann, who founded Kunstradio, she went into the radio studio and I joined her, and I was quite young, and then there was still some of the sound engineers that were wearing a white coat, like they would be doctors. It was really weird. Still some of them left at the time. And then Heidi did her narration, recorded it on the wheel-to-wheel, and then the sound engineer was cutting it, and Heidi said, "Oh, I have to go and write the text or whatever." And so I was very young with that white coat on the sound engineer. And then it was a piece where Heidi said before, "Yeah, and then it should have like 20 seconds of silence before and after." I can remember it was terrible discussions in the studio, and it was that old sound engineer in the white coat and me, the young girl, also defending the 20 seconds of silence before and after the piece, because it was part of the concept. That was a nightmare, because there is no silence on radio, on normal radio. That's the fear of the silence. It's like a crime story.
Silence, it's a sin. We are all pagan when think about silence in all kind of radio station. Because when I talk about this in other kind of radio station, now with the online radio or these kind of things, when you talk about silence, there is no, not silence. You need to merge, cut off, no silence. What? We are do this because we love to do this. We think in this kind of thing. So it's
really amazing because also like here, like the Friday before Easter, like at 3 o'clock, there is always should be 1 minute also of silence, no? Like the death of Jesus and so on. If a pope is dying, there should be 1 minute of silence. And in the radio, of course, because after 30 seconds, as mentioned, the emergency broadcast is going on. So you need to really put the little sound wave into the 1 minute file of silence, and you need some little peak one cannot hear, but the system is recognizing. And then I remember discussions from the heads of the cultural chamber if that 1 minute can be shorter, because nobody will stop it anyway if it is really 1 minute, because 1 minute is too long if it is silent. That was big discussions, really. And then over the years, the 1 minute got shorter and shorter. And then I think there was one listener who said that was not a minute. And then he stopped it and said, and it was maybe 45 seconds or 40 seconds, but that was the most they could handle because the fear of the silence just popped in like crazy.
totally.
Yeah, this consideration of silence as a weapon reminds me of a story Kenneth Goldsmith told once. In his 15th year at WFMU radio station in the US, he started doing a show called Hour of Pain, and his original idea was playing 1 hour of silence every week. And it seems that you are penalized if you have more than 10 seconds of silence by the FCC. So the show was stopped because of that. And Goldsmith was defending his idea on the grounds of the concept of silence in contemporary music and 20th century music. And the head of the station said it wasn't possible because he was going to be paid fines all the time because of that. And it seems that after 1 minute, the fine is much more expensive. So the interesting thing that comes to my mind is why silence is forbidden. It may be associated to malfunctioning, but that's not the only possibility. Myself, I have a piece that it's a 1 minute silence, and when I started performing live, I did 1 minute of silence before starting, and people was very upset and uncomfortable because they didn't know what I was doing. And I was very nervous too. So it seems that everything sort of amplified because of that choice. And it was very funny. The last time I did that was in 2015 at a radio show, and this radio show was also broadcasted in video form. And I remember when I watched the performance afterwards, there was a lot of digital hum and noise during that period. So I was very excited and surprised at what happened because there was no silence at all. And even at the studio, there was no silence. We were able to hear the humming of the computer and the desk and the microphone and the keyboards and all that. So it seems that it's non-existent. If we think of it as absence of sound, which is the straight definition.
And there is also, like in Linz, there is a project called Hörstadt, which translates into English something like a listening city And what they did as one of their main projects some years ago, they just close or next to the main street of Linz, they organized a room. It was a silence room where people could go in and just get away from the noise and have silence, which is really great, I think. And it's also interesting because sometimes people also seem to seek for silence and get out of all the noise and of the city, and with all that noise you have all the time in big cities. And so that silence room, people really use it. I don't know, to get out of the humming and cars and all that, to calm down and to have some minutes of peace and calm in silence.
So artists using it was in itself exciting and spectacular, but of course there was no product of that. These pieces of thermal paper with images on them, which were transmitted across the world, didn't have any value or any permanent. So it was just the activity of operating within the system, and it required a lot of organizational energy to put a communications project together. And that's something I'd learned to do through these. You don't learn to do such a thing. It's a level of commitment or engagement, obsession, if you like. So you spend a lot of time organizing things, getting people together across the world, and then getting them all together on the telephone at the same time and working with these projects. We're creating spaces. We're creating spaces. Space.
Live to the radio.
Actually, also on the day then, after school, of course, then I wanted to study biochemistry. And there was a course in Vienna, and it took, I think, 30 people out of 200 that they could do the course in biochemistry, like for 3 years, like a college. And the day the college has started, I went to Innsbruck, that was in '93, because there was a non-profit association. Heidi was the head of, and it was located in Innsbruck in Tyrol, that is in the very west of Austria. But you have to imagine Austria is really a small country, and it's the longest, I think, 800 kilometers long or something. So it's really tiny compared to the countries you live in. And they needed somebody helping the main organizer to organize a symposium called On the Air. And also it had sound installations and live performances and so on. And on the day the biochemistry college has started, I jumped into the train and went to Innsbruck to help organizing the symposium On the Air. I never regretted it. So, and there in Innsbruck in '93, I met Jose Guess and Concha Jerez, because they also have been invited artists.
That's wonderful. It sounds like a fairy tale. Yeah, really.
My parents haven't been so happy about my decision, but I mean, I never regretted it. It was just like very spontaneous. I said, yeah, okay, then I go to Innsbruck, and if I don't like it, then I go back after a week and say I was sick or something. But I never went back to the college, so.
It's a great story. It's really impressive, and it is, even with all the varieties, it is a fairy tale. Well, listen carefully the thing that you tell us. I want to ask you why you choose this path of the radio in the way to do the art. What was the light that see you in this way?
Well, in the beginning it was more like an accident, because I met Heidi Grundmann, and that was an accident because her son was with me in school, and we have been in the same class, and so I have known Heidi as the mother of a colleague of mine in school, and then she was looking for somebody bringing a certain order to her audio cassettes. And the thing is that I started listening to the audio cassettes. I think I was really young, like I was 17 or 18 maybe. And for me, the way the artists, and it was really different, very different artists, like from Terry Fox, John Rose, Austrian artists like Elisabeth Zimmern, Andreas Sodomka, and so on. They all used sound in a very different way or radio, and somehow it opened my ears. I started learning how to listen very different maybe, or maybe just more carefully. And it also opened my eyes to how I listen to the world, and it never let me go again. That sounds maybe strange, but it's like if you open up your ears and start listening carefully to the world, to the people, and also how they work, also with maybe sounds which in the beginning not so common to what people normally listen, then you start really taking a more deeper listening to all your surroundings also. And I think it also opens up another mindset, because then suddenly you notice, okay, I can close my eyes but not my ears. And you can also find something beautiful in a hum or in a noise, and you find rhythm where you never maybe have heard rhythm before. And also, with the listening, of course, it's then a really great thing to be on the Cultural National Public Radio in Austria. Artists could experiment in Kunstradio and also use the medium of radio to get in communication with other people and also with the listeners. And the great thing is also, I think what I also think is very fascinating about radio, and also that's kind of art on the radio, is that there's always one person listening, for sure. I'm convinced by that. Whatever you broadcast, there's at least one person listening and really listening. And also that idea maybe that you're not alone, and that it is always also a surprise if you listen carefully. And that somehow I got hooked on that. And then of course it's great to work with artists from all over the world and to always meet new people, new artists, and also there's always a new idea or a different way of working, maybe with similar sounds, but it's always different, and of course it changed with technology also. But also if you see, maybe one more sentence, because you also asked of the pop music, I also like to listen to pop music sometimes, of course, and if one thinks back of the first sampling machines, samplers, there's also artists like Bob Ostertag. He used to be one of the pioneers of sampling and so on. And in the beginning, it was like you only could sample like 10 seconds, and with the sampler. You always could do it with the magnetic band, but with the sampler, that was a revolution, because suddenly you could really do different kinds of loops at the same time. I mean, very short, but still. And if you look what happens, all that sampling techniques, they moved also, or you could find them much later also in pop music. Because many things artists find out, start working with or exploring, they then later on become commercial and just common. Like many other things, not only sampling, but also like if you think back of the early beginnings of the internet. I don't know, maybe it was totally different in South America, but in Europe, in the mid of the 90s, it was the artists who also tried things out in the moment it was possible. Of course, the background is in military and so on, but the World Wide Web in the beginning was a free space, and the idea was that one can use it for art and for communication without commercials and all that. That didn't work out 100%, but well. But that's the fascinating thing for me, is that, like, I don't know, listening in a different way and always learn about new techniques and hear new sounds maybe, or in different combinations without restrictions, and that's fascinating for me.
Yes, those techniques are very fascinating, and we can see now in the pop music it's that so much producers from the experimental music goes to produce pop music with all the experimental techniques. This is very, very interesting. So when the people say, what is the experimental music? Well, you need to listen some albums from the pop artists, and you can listen a lot of experimental music in this album. Lemonade from Beyoncé, it's an interesting experimental produced album in this way.
It is.
Radiokunst, Kunstradio.
Willkommen zu Rescue Post-Industrial Dynamics on Air von Rupert Huber, Sarah Mani, Balázs Bandi und Mia Zabelka, sagt Elisabeth Zimmermann. Vorgestern performten der österreichische Komponist Rupert Huber, die in Istrien und Österreich lebende Künstlerin Sarah Mani und der ungarische Musiker Balázs Bandi zum ersten Mal gemeinsam live. Und zwar am Campus der Johannes-Kepler-Universität in Linz als einer der Programmpunkte der großen Konzertnacht der Ars Electronica. Und die Komponistin Mia Zabelka, die heuer mit dem österreichischen Kunstpreis Musik ausgezeichnet wurde,
So, Elisabeth, thank you very much for being here.
Okay, brilliant. But I'm going to record it also here on my little recorder.
Oh, great. No problem. Thank you very much.
The more recordings, the better.
I hope so, because then, of course, you have all the room a little bit, but it doesn't matter. You will see.
No problem.
It's part of the soundscape.
Are you both also radio artists, or are you considering yourself artists, or?
Very interesting, because the interviewer people have an interview now.
That's a problem with me. We were saying it.
Yes, we are both artists.
Yeah.
Well, Gerardo will tell you his expertise, but I started as an artist when I started this radio program in 2011. This radio program started with one name, and in 3 years changed the name as a part educative project in the university and in the radio station from the university when I studied a long time ago. And then I start to do more seriously compositions, and I think that I became an artist, and a radio artist, especially.
Yeah, by the way, I'm honored to be talking to you since I've been submitting gifts to the Arts Birthday celebration by Kunstradio, so it's really nice to have them as part of your catalog, and some of my friends have told me that they have listened to them through the radio, which is a double honor to me. And I've been working in radios. I've been coming and going from radio since the 90s, I guess, the 1990s. First as co-host and producer, and that allowed me to generate a sort of artistic research project. And it seems that the project has been crossed through these radio leanings, so to speak. And from then on, I've been moving through different areas and genres that seem to be related in this context, in terms of that everything can be, all of the pieces can be understood and listened to as a sort of a huge radio show or a huge streaming performance. So it's really nice to be talking to you and being interviewed at the same time.
It's very nice to meet you, and thank you again for giving presence to art. That's always important, I think. Okay. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I feel honored that you invite me. Always funny if one has that also time differences, but it's still right on your side and here too, so in Vienna. So my name is Elisabeth Zimmermann, and I am the producer of a radio program called Kunstradio, which was now renamed into Kunst zum Hören, Art to Listen to, because there was a program restructuring. And Kunstradio is a program on the National Public Radio of Austria, and Kunstradio is existing since 1987, and it was founded by the art critic and journalist Heidi Grundmann. And it was founded as a place for art. So it's not about reporting about artists and artistic events, but it is really meant as a space where art can happen. And also from the very early beginning, Kunstradio also was connecting with other spaces and so on. And I would consider myself as a Kunstradio child to a certain degree, or everything I know from Kunstradio, Heidi, and all the artists who have been involved into Kunstradio, because I already started working in Kunstradio in 1991 as I was still in school, and I did a summer job at Kunstradio because Heidi Grundmann, she needed somebody to bring a certain order to her 900 audio tapes. You know, in former times, that little audio tapes where one could record things and stuff. It was 900 in a big pile in the Kunstradio office in the old radio house in Vienna. Yeah, that's how it all started. I brought a certain order to the audio cassettes of Heidi and Kunstradio. Then I was still in school, and there were also some digital audio tapes that already, but I think maybe 10 or something, and also some CDs already, because it was 91. And then I went back to school, and then I finished school in 92, I did my A-level, and then I went back to Kunstradio, because Heidi was happy and she said, yeah, it worked out well, and and the archive worked, and I still have the map, because in 91, as we did the archive of the audio cassettes of Kunstradio, with each and every letter and artist, there was one page of A4 paper, handwritten, my handwriting, was documented on paper with handwriting, because it was 91. And then in 92, as I came back after school, I started building up Apple computer, so-called FileMaker archive, where I put all the addresses and brought a certain order to all the papers and so on. And while I was working on that archive thing and addresses, I, of course, also listened to some of the audio cassettes, also because not all of them had something written on them, or probably, so like proper written, so that you have known, okay, this is an interview with Jose, guess, from the date was this and that, but was, in most cases, it just said Jose, or Iges, or I don't know, John Rose, or interview, and nothing else. I was like, okay, and so I had to listen to it, and I think that is also because of listening to all many of the audio cassettes, I got very much involved in all the audio pieces and so on Heidi collected from all the artists from all over the world. Because Heidi had a program before Kunstradio was founded in 1987. It was called Art Today, Kunst heute. And it also had a series called Art to Listen To. And Art to Listen To, like the program is called now, that was where Kunstradio started off. And so she collected mainly audio cassettes of more and more artists, lots of them coming from visual arts, gave her audio works on tape. And because I did that archive, I really started listening to the pieces. I somehow got totally into it, because it was like, there's also funny pieces, like also very weird pieces. I mean, at the time for me it sounded sometimes weird, and it was really interesting. And also funny pieces, like I also listened to pieces by John Rose, and that was partly funny. And also, like much later, I realized that there's also a connection why I maybe also really liked listening to all that so-called radio art, which was totally new to me. Because as I was, I don't know, very young, a teenager, I was a kind of a gothic girl, and I liked to listen to noise music and throbbing gristle. And it happened that Heidi Grundmann has had in her Kunstradio office, she has had throbbing gristle LP, the first one they brought out, you know. And so I think there is a kind of connection there also. I started working in Kunstradio, and I never did anything else in the end as working with, in Kunstradio and working with Heidi. And Heidi also even asked me already, because she had to retire with 60 years old in 98, because that was the rule at the ORF, at the Austrian National Public Radio, that I had to retire with 60 years old. And she asked me a year before, I think, or two, if I can imagine to take over Kunstradio. And I have been 25 years old, and it was 97, and I looked at her and said, what? But I'm so young, I'm not sure if I can do it. And she trusts me totally, and and here I am. So still being the producer of Kunstradio, which is now renamed in Art to Listen to. But in the end, I never did anything else than working for Kunstradio, and also, of course, inside the radio. I also got involved in the last years also into radio drama, because radio drama is also opening up more and more into more experimental fields, so to say. And so, yeah, that's what I do. I work with artists, and I love live radio, because that's a wonderful thing, because it's not controllable, and it's really great if you don't know what is going to happen. In the 90s, because Heidi had such a bad conscience, that I stopped studying, because I had no time. There were so many projects with Kunstradio. I then I studied cultural and media management on the weekends in Salzburg. And I finished it in 1999. So it was like a master's studies, because the cultural management studies, which was belonging to the University of Linz, they wanted people from the cultural and art field to study cultural management, and they also accepted the practical knowledge in working in the art field as points for the university. That's why people like me who really have been in the art field could study and get a master.
Lovely. Thank you. Lovely, yes.
Yeah.
Hellas stand in geschwungener Schrift über der Bedienungsleiste. Das Gold der Buchstaben fand sich wieder im Gold der Umrahmung, welche Holz und Stoff zusammenhielt. Ein Gegensatz zur dünnen braunen Platte, die sein geheimnisvolles Inneres verschloss. Ungefähr konnte ich ahnen, was sich darinnen befand, denn mein Onkel saß oft in seinem Zimmer, wo er an alten Apparaten schraubte, sie zerlegte, mir einzelne Bestandteile erklärte. Aber das Rätsel, wie die Musik und die Stimmen aus dem Radio kamen, löste er nicht.
I've been listening to this recent Beyoncé album, and there's a lot of sampling techniques. Some of them are very
related to hip hop, and some others are even taking the background from other tracks. She recorded a cover version of Blackbird by the Beatles, and she took the tracks from Paul McCartney playing guitar and tapping with his shoes. The first thing that came to my mind was, how much did she pay to use it? Sampling the Beatles is almost impossible. And also the fact that you're able to take something and nobody's criticizing you for saying that you don't play or you don't replay it, etc. So in this sense, it seems that this blurring of boundaries that has also been, I think, one of the source of experimental music, even appealing to the fact that if you start wondering if it's accurate to call it experimental music as such, it seems that it's more like an approach or like a way of approaching things than a style or a genre. And what Franco was saying is living proof that this genre, this boundary has been blurred.
Totally. I think I have to listen to the Lemonade album by Beyonce because I think I had never listened to the whole album.
It's kind of demanding sometimes. Sometimes your albums are very long for the standards, and it seems that the pop artists are trying to work with that. Taylor Swift released a sort of double album with 31 tracks. So it seems that the box set is becoming a sort of common currency, so to speak. It also reminds me of what Giles Martin said about when he was asked what was his favorite Beatles album, and he said he had none because he has listened to the whole thing as a box set. So for him, the Beatles album is just a box set comprised of 13 LPs. So he has no favorite Beatles album because of that. So it seems that this concept of opus as something which is so big, it's becoming again commonplace.
Yeah, because especially with the Beatles, if you think of Revolution number 9,
right,
it also had all the experiments in it. It's really fascinating, no?
Yeah, and it has been performed at the San Francisco Tape Music Center Festival twice, alongside pieces by Luc Ferrari and Francis Dumont or even Elia Radin and those kind of people. So it seems that the Beatles were right about that.
Yeah, that seems like.
Right. Franco.
Meine Stimme ist alt. Sie hat schon in den Hühnen gesungen. Meine Stimme ist klar. Meine Stimme ist wahr. Meine Stimme vibriert.
is kind of meditative in certain terms and necessary for the soul. I was curious when you mentioned about this radio drama thing, because there's been some sort of resurgence of the genre, of the practice. How is it that you approach it, and is there any consideration in terms of art and in terms of these unexpected qualities? How are they translated into radio drama, concerning your experience of what you've been going through now?
Radio drama, I was involved as very experimental, because it is interesting that I have the feeling that the radio drama, or the Hörspiel, as we call it in German, is opening up very much into more experiments, and for them, or for the genre, very also like really opening up also in the direction that not always you have to understand every word, and to really get more sounds into it, and so that the sound and the language is becoming more equal than it used to be. And also there is a tendency that it's because in Hörspiel it was always very clear. There was somebody has written the text, the author has written the text, and then the director was doing all the rest with the sound engineers and the actors and so on. And meanwhile, it's very often like this, that the authors also do the direction themselves and sometimes speak themselves, and there's not so much, but it's going much more also in the direction, if you do more experimental radio drama, it goes into that direction as people really also take over more roles, and maybe also not always the professional actors are reading everything, or sometimes it's more like also improvising on the text, which is interesting, I think. And there's also the borders are blurry there too. So like with pop music, it's like everything gets blurry. And that's interesting also, I think.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. I was wondering, and I was remembering some pieces by a Polish composer who did lots of works while living here in Chile, Leni Alexander. She sort of imported a lot of things from Europe, and one of them was Hörspiel, and apart from that, Musik Concrete. The first Musik Concrete albums heard in Chile were brought by her after a trip. And this has been discovered around 10 years ago. She did some electroacoustic pieces herself, but she was more interested in Hörspiel, and she did 3 or 4 works on that, mostly dealing with this condition of being an immigrant fleeing from fascism. Twice she lived it while fleeing from Poland to here, and after the coup here to coming back to Europe with her family. And it's very interesting the way she blended music and samples, working with samples from cassette tapes and vinyl records, with recording singers and recording some sort of text, and text moving from 2 or 3 different languages at the same time. So it seems that the seed has been, as you said, the seed is sort of been growing and being recovered and being blended again with this new.
Again, because in the beginning also it was like in the national public radios, especially also in Germany and also in Radio France, they had also the experimental music studios. Also in Poland was very famous for its experimental music studio, but they also did music, and also at the BBC, of course, they also did music for radio drama, and very experimental ones in the beginning, very. And I have the feeling that there is also things coming back, and the borders are more blurry and so on. And one is also going away a little bit, that you understand everything, and everything then only has to be in German. Yeah, because I just produced a piece called, or a radio drama called Whistleblower, and it's about refugees from Syria, but it's in German and Arabic language, which is totally, for Austrian National Public Radio, that's very unusual.
That's great. We have the same situation with our show. English-speaking programs or chapters such as this one are broadcasted in English, and the ones in Spanish are broadcasted in Spanish. So we've been working in written form for the versions for almost all of them as a second step of this collecting interviews and opinions. And I'm very glad that what you presented us and what you've given us as a gift is there's a power of continuing doing things following not only your heart, but also the desire to experiment as far as you can and to blur boundaries, not because of blurring itself, but because it seems that boundaries are working as power operation or power outlets and not related to what art is in itself. The same happens with music. Music tends to mix up and generate fusion in places you even imagine, just such the one that we mentioned before, this sort of dwelling into pop music or pop musics, so to speak. And is it because of works like yours that this has been happening? Not also in terms of what you have produced, but the huge and generous door you've opened for that.
Yeah, together with all the artists, because without them it wouldn't work at all.
Yeah, so thank you very, very much for this long life journey and for sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's a big pleasure.
It would be even more fun if we could be in the same studio.
El ruido es el mensaje.
Vamos por más, dice la rana, escúchame, ¿eh? Esto recién empieza.